Welcome to Patrick Marsh, which is one of the great natural resources in Dane County. We're here on the eastern doorstep of the city of Sun Prairie, overlooking Patrick Marsh. It's about a 350-acre conservation landscape that includes amazing prairies, wetlands, marshes, trails, and a lot of human history of occupation since the last ice age 10,000 years ago. The conservation landscape here that stretches from the highway on the north through the marsh, down to the prairie, down to the neighborhoods on the south side of the marsh is about 2 times the size of Disneyland in California. It's about 3 times the size of the Mall of America in Minneapolis. But in my estimation, this place has so much more to offer than those places, because this is the place where people can fall in love with nature. So I'm going to be telling a story about that and about how this protected place came to be. It is a story about the unlikely action of a state agency, committed citizens who, as Margaret Mead said, committed citizens are the ones who change the world. It's about smart park planners in Dane County and the city of Sun Prairie. It's about partnerships with nonprofits and service organizations, volunteers, and middle school students. We are now down on the western side of the marsh, and I hope you can see behind me, we just had a whole raft of about 9 huge white pelicans float past us. It's one of the great attractions about Patrick Marsh in the spring is the huge number of pelicans that spend a couple of weeks here. And that's part of the story about how Patrick Marsh has always been a place for people and wildlife to be. Human habitation in this area goes back to the time of the last glaciation, when Native Americans used this as hunting grounds. Passing through, there's remnants of old trails here and places to meet and congregate. More recently, there's a lot more human activity because we're in a much more populated world. But when you think about the history of Patrick Marsh, the marsh itself has come and gone over the years. It's kind of an ephemeral body of water. In dry years, it might dry up or just be slightly damp, and in wet years, it would be flooded. So it wasn't always great to be farmed, but in more recent history, it was great farmland, very rich. And this is where the story comes in about a state agency that is the reason we're here today. So the Wisconsin Department of Transportation, which is not the organization you might think of about land conservation, is the pivotal player here. About 30 years ago, the DOT was planning to widen the highway behind me, Highway 151, from 2 lanes to 4 lanes heading up towards Columbus. And now here enters one of our local heroes, Bill Wambach. Bill was an engineer for the DOT, and he came upon the idea, living here in Sun Prairie, that maybe what the DOT's plans to do could actually benefit the marsh. And there was a new program just started, the Wetland Mitigation Program, that encouraged the state, the DOT, as they had to destroy wetlands when they were widening the highway, to preserve and restore wetlands elsewhere. And so Bill promoted that idea, and it got traction, and it's how we have the marsh as a conservation area today. So Bill was the guy actually out here on the ground, walking with the landowners, the Hanleys and the Krebs, about where could be the boundary of what the DOT could buy. Worked on making it as big as possible, because Bill is a conservationist. So it happened, it was purchased, the DOT removed the pumps that the farmers had in to drain the wetlands, and very quickly the water returned, and very quickly the bird life returned. So soon after that, in the early 90s, the DOT transferred the property to the DNR as a wildlife area, as a state wildlife area. And that is the core of what is here today. So of about the 340 acres owned in conservation at Patrick Marsh, about 200 are owned by the State Department of Natural Resources, 80 are owned by Groundswell Conservancy, and part of our land was once owned by the Dane County, and the remainder is owned by the city of Sun Prairie. We have just taken a short walk from the edge of the marsh over to the Kettle Pond, which is a wonderful gem at Patrick Marsh. Kettle ponds are formed, they're glacial features, so when the glaciation, when the glaciers were retreating and melting about 10,000 years ago, as they melt and as they kind of retreat to the north, they drop off blocks of ice. And sediment is filled in around those blocks of ice from the remains of the glacier. Later, when those ice blocks melt, you're left with a kettle or a pot or a pond. And so we have this wonderful example of a kettle pond right here at Patrick Marsh. It is a place in the spring, if you love frogs, to come and enjoy the incredible noise of frogs, of chorus frogs and spring peepers making a huge racket here in the spring. And it is also surrounded by a beautiful oak savanna. These are these beautiful open-grown oak trees. Around here they're mainly bur oaks and white oaks, and they have an understory of kind of largely prairie plants. It's a beautiful place, and this community type, this natural community of savanna, is one of our rarest in Wisconsin, so it's all the more important to protect. And so we have here a hidden gem on this in Patrick Marsh, a quiet, more secluded spot that's been protected thanks to all the citizen activity I'm going to talk about. After the DOT transferred the land to the DNR, the Dane County Parks Department did some planning for the area and produced a project plan for Patrick Marsh, which was adopted by the county board in 2003. And then one of my other local heroes, Gene Barron, stepped in. Gene formed a group called Patrick Marsh Conservancy. Gene just lives up the hill from us right now and has always loved the marsh. And she took upon herself with her group to sell the virtues of Patrick Marsh and all the opportunities to the community. So she talked to Sun Prairie Rotary, to the Lions Club, to the city of Sun Prairie, to the town of Bristol, town of Sun Prairie, more conversations with Dane County, with the DNR, pretty much anybody she could talk to. And one of those people was me. My first month on the job at Groundswell Conservancy was back in 2003, and Gene was one of the first people who walked in the office and said, let's work together to help protect this area. And so we've had a wonderful partnership over the years, and it is because of citizen action that mobilizes a community, and Gene is a great example of that. Another actor here, another great story, is Patrick Marsh Middle School, which is just located a little bit to the west of here. That school was built in 1998, and teachers there realized the opportunity they had to make an outdoor classroom so close to the school. So beginning with Nancy Schlimgin and then Mark Smith and today with Vince Brandel, they have taken advantage of getting kids outside to learn and explore and enjoy nature. They formed the Discovery Club, which is an afternoon program for kids in the spring and the fall to come out to the marsh and to learn and explore. They do water quality studies. They look at the quality, the depth and clarity of water in the marsh. They look at small mammal populations. They actually live trap voles and mice and learn about the population. They, as middle school students, are doing things that I didn't do until I was an ecology student in college. So they really get a leg up on understanding our natural world. So between them, the middle school, Gene Barron's group, all the citizen activity, that really has created a wonderful groundswell, I'm going to say, of support for this wonderful natural area. Well, now we're standing at another one of my favorite places here at Patrick Marsh. This is the wildlife viewing platform on the west side of the marsh. This is actually built in the shape of a bird in flight, and it was designed by Shane Bruneau, who at the time was a landscape architecture student at the University of Wisconsin. And it's designed so that a teacher and their whole class can be together overlooking the marsh at the same time. So the teacher can stand right here, and the arms are where the 20 or 30 students can be. So it's a great opportunity to show a lot of people the same thing at once. And it got built because of another wonderful community partnership. This time it was the lead of Sun Prairie Rotary, which provided a lot of funding and a lot of manpower to make this happen, along with the funding of the EVU Foundation. We were able to hire, through the grant provided by Sun Prairie Rotary, a crew from Operation Fresh Start. That is a wonderful program that helps kids at risk learn great life skills, including how to build wonderful complex things like this, and how to get to work on time, and how to be a good employee. So this partnership created not only a wonderful wildlife viewing platform, but a great experience for the Operation Fresh Start crew and all the volunteers who helped out. And this was back in 2015, and it was part of a larger project to try to spruce up Patrick Marsh. So cleaned up the parking lot, installed the bird gate that we were at earlier today, refurbished the kiosk and the posters there. The middle school students created 4 signs along the road here, along the trail here, that talk about the human history of the marsh. And we doubled down our efforts to keep the trails mowed so people feel this is a wonderful and safe place to come. So all these things come together to help really have a community embrace a place. And at the dedication back in 2015, Sun Prairie Mayor Paul Esser came and he welcomed us to the dedication. And Paul and the city have become just wonderful supporters and advocates for Patrick Marsh. And actually Paul was the closer on a deal that Laura Hicklin from Dane County Land and Water department I worked on for 10 years with a landowner to buy 25 acres of land just in front of me that overlooks the marsh. Paul was the one who came in and helped seal the deal, so that's just a great thing to have a local mayor helping this kind of conservation happen. This is also the site of Marsh Madness. So Vince Brandel at the middle school organizes every fall this incredible opportunity for students from the middle school to teach students from elementary schools about nature and art and science. So last fall, last October, the middle school students deployed themselves in teaching stations all along the road, the walkway in here and the wildlife viewing platform. And then 4 elementary schools came, and the kids got to interact, they got to learn from their peers, and they got to learn from the middle school students. And one of the best ways to learn is to teach, so I think the middle school students really got something good out of it as well. Middle school students have also been great at prairie planting. They've helped us plant almost 40 acres of prairie out here. So another example of really wonderful partnership that has made Patrick Marsh such a great place. So thanks to all the incredible community partnerships here at Patrick Marsh, we have a very bright future. We're looking forward to creating more connections between the marsh and the land around it and the neighborhoods all around it. Better connections to the middle school so kids have even better access to get out here. We've got more prairie to plant, more trails to build, and more habitat to restore. So this has been a story about how communities come together to create great natural areas. This history has been repeated across Dane County, places like Cherokee Marsh, the Black Earth Creek Valley. It's happened before, it can happen again. It's because people have vision, talent, and resources and energy to make these things happen. So I'm Jim Welsh. I'm the Executive Director of Groundswell Conservancy. We are your local nonprofit land trust, and we help communities and landowners protect great places like this so there's a green future for all of us. So thank you for allowing me to tell this story on the Conservation Corner.